The first topic which we are going to see now is, does God exist? So this question is like asking, does our parents exist? Yes, of course our parents exist, right? Otherwise, how come we would come into existence? So in the same way, yes, God also exists. Otherwise, how come all these things would come into existence? Everything in the universe, all the stars, all the galaxies and the planets, how all these things would come into existence if there is no God? And also everything in the earth, all the species and we mankind, how all these things would come into existence if there is no God? So there is a debate in the world on how all these things came into existence. There is a debate called creation versus evolution. The people on creation side, they believe that all these things have been created by God as mentioned in the Bible. And the people on evolution side, they believe that all these things have evolved over a period of time. And they say that we humans have evolved from monkeys. And they also believe that life on earth is possible because of chance, because of luck. So if evolution says that we humans have evolved from monkeys, then why there is no other species which has evolved from humans? Why there is no other species which has come out of humans? That evolution cannot answer. And evolution is just a theory. It cannot practically prove how all these things have evolved over a period of time. And people who believe in evolution, they believe that life on earth is possible because of chance, because of luck. So if we ask them what is the probability for life on earth to happen by chance or by luck, you know what they say? Some group of scientists, they say that the probability is 1 is to 1 quadrillion. And some other group of scientists, they say that the probability is 1 is to 700 quintillion. And some other group of scientists, they say that we do not have enough data to tell what is this probability. So all these probabilities, they are actually suggesting to us, they are actually telling to us that it is highly impossible for life on earth to happen by chance or by luck. So life on earth is possible because God has made it to possible. And all these things came into existence because God has made them to come into existence. So if there was no God and if there was nothing in the beginning, then only nothing would have ever existed, right? Imagine there is no God and there was nothing in the beginning and there was only just one big rock in the universe. So whatever may happen, only that one big rock would have existed, right? How come all these things would come into existence? How come all these great, wonderful, marvelous and complex things would come into existence if there is no God? The people on creation side, they use this statement that how can something can come out of nothing? They use this statement to defend that God has created everything. But science someday in future is going to prove that something can come out of nothing. They are going to prove that all these things came out of nowhere. Why? Because when God created everything, God created just by His word. God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God said, let the living creatures come out of water, and they came. And God said, let the animals come out of earth, and they came. So since God created everything just by His word, science someday in future is going to prove that all these things came out of nowhere. They will be able to explain the process of how the living creatures came out of water. They will be able to explain the process of how animals came out of earth. But they cannot explain why they came out. Why they came out? Because God said, that is why. So they can explain the process, but they cannot explain the processor. They can explain the creation, but they cannot explain the creator. So in future, when science proves that something can come out of nothing and all these things came out of nowhere, we shouldn't be surprised about it. We should still believe and we should still keep faith in God, that it is God who has made all these things to happen. It is God who has created all these things. The Bible also tells us that the heavens and the earth declare the glory of God, which means the presence and the existence of God. So, are these things enough for us to conclude and say that yes, God is existing? Can we Are these things sufficient? Can we say that yes, God is existing based on these things? So I started to ask myself this same question. So when I started to ask myself this same question, then I recollected my teenage days. So in those days, I was very curious to know whether God was existing or not. I didn't know anything about creation versus evolution, but I was curious to know whether God is existing or not. So I used to test God. I used to say that, God, can you do this so that I know whether you are existing or not? And God used to do those things for me. God used to answer my prayers. But after some time, God stopped doing things for me. God was not answering my prayers. So that is when I realized that my sins were between me and God. And that is why God is not doing things for me. That is why God is not answering my prayers. And when I started to confess about them, then God started answering my prayers. So that is how I was able to say that yes, God is existing. And also back in the olden days, when the people didn't know how the thunder was functioning, how and why the thunder was happening, people were saying that God is actually traveling in the sky. But after some years, when science was able to explain how and why the thunder is happening, then people started to say that, oh, this is how and why the thunder is happening. So this is not done by God, so God is not existing. But now, after some more years, now when science and technology is much more developed, now when we are sending telescopes into space, by looking at everything in the space and everything in the universe, what scientists are saying is that everything in the universe is a very big grand design, and there should be a very big grand designer for it. There should be a creator for it, which is God. So what I'm trying to tell through this is that we should not define the existence or non-existence of God based on the knowledge of mankind. Because at any point of time, the knowledge of mankind is only limited. Mankind doesn't have knowledge of each and everything at any point of time, at any age or at any period. So we should not define the existence or non-existence of God based on our knowledge, based on the knowledge of mankind. So based on what shall we conclude and say that yes, God is existing? Based on creation, yes, the creation and everything around us, they indicate to us about the presence and the existence of God. But we should not limit God only to one single act of creation. Because after creation, God did not went into sleep. From creation till today, God is still working. God is still doing so many things. So based on those things, we should experience those things and then say that yes, God is existing. Many of us, we believe in the existence of God because we have been told so. From our childhood, we have been told to believe in the existence of God, so we are believing in the existence of God. But how many of us have really encountered God? How many of us have really experienced God? This is a question which every one of us should ask to ourselves. How are we saying that yes, God is existing? Have we experienced God and saying that yes, God is existing? Or are we saying that yes, God is existing because someone has told to us? So Gideon has tested God and he concluded that God was with him. And Jonathan also tested God and he understood that God is with him. So today, how are you saying, how are you concluding and saying that yes, God is existing and God is with us? So the Bible tells us that God is looking on earth to see who is the one who is seeking him. So God is looking on earth with a very heavy heart. He's looking at earth to see whether there are anyone who is seeking him. So if we seek God, then God will do things for us. Then God will reveal himself to us. And based on those things, those experiences, we should be saying that yes, God is existing. But sometimes God may not be doing the things for us. God may not be doing the things in the way in which we want. So that is when we start to doubt. That is when we start to say that does God really exist, or is God just in my beliefs? So when God is not doing things for us, when God is not doing things in our way, then that is when we start to doubt about the existence of God. So when God is not doing things for us, it doesn't mean that God is not existing. It means that what we are asking God is not right. It means that what we are asking God is against His will. It means that sometimes God purposefully delays something for our good, for our benefit. But that doesn't mean that God is not existing. God is existing and God is right there. So next time when things are not happening, when things are not going in our way, every one of you ask this question to yourself. Are you doing the things which God wants you to do? Are you doing the things in the way in which God wants you to do? So we don't do the things which God wants us to do. And we don't do the things in the way in which God wants us to do. But we expect God to do things for us, and we expect God to do things in our way. We are so selfish, right? So one person who was very disappointed when God didn't do things for him, when God didn't do things in his way, he wrote a book called God is Dead. And this book is becoming very famous in the world. But it's actually our faith that is dead. It's actually our faith that should come into life. It's actually our faith that should come into existence. It's actually our faith that should be revived. But God is right there. He is right there where He was when fire came down from heaven as Elijah prayed. He is right there where He was when Abraham laid Isaac on the altar. He is right there where He was when Job lost everything. And today also He is right there and He is looking at us. He is looking at us with a very heavy heart to see, are we seeking God or not? So if we seek God, then we will find God. He is ready to reveal Himself to us. Elijah was looking for God in a fire, but he couldn't find God in a fire. Elijah was looking for God in wind and earthquake. He couldn't find God in them also. Finally, Elijah found God in a whisper. And Moses was looking for God throughout his life. And Moses found finally God in a bush. And Joseph found God in his dreams. So today the question for you is, have you found God? So if you haven't found God, then it's time start seeking God. If you seek God, then you will find God. The people who doesn't believe in the existence of God, the atheist, they say that we want proof for the existence of God. So when you say you want proof for the existence of God, what proof do you need? Do you need voter ID of God? Or do you need driving license of God? Or do you need passport of God? What proof do you need? So next time when people ask you, we want proof for the existence of God, you ask them, what proof do you need? I'm sure they will not have an immediate answer and they will stumble to give you an answer. And every person has their own definition of proof. One person will say that if God is existing, then why this? Then some other person will say that if God is existing, then why that? So that is why we should personally get connected to God to know whether God is existing or not. But one common proof which people ask is, if God is existing, then why can't we see God? We can't see God because we are not equipped, we are not capable to see God. Can we look at sun for even for a few minutes? We cannot, right? So how can we look God who has made that sun? God is so powerful, there is so much of light in God that if we see God, we cannot withstand. We will die. When Moses was spending time with God on Mount Sinai, God said to Moses that no person has ever seen my face and lived. And after spending time with God, when Moses came down from the mountain, the people were terrified even to see the face of Moses. So when people could not see the face of a person who spent time in the presence of God, how can people see God? If we see God, we cannot withstand it. We will die. Paul saw the light of God and he became blind. He became blind for 3 days. After prayer, he again received sight. But if they didn't pray, Paul wouldn't have received sight never. So we don't have the capabilities, we are not equipped to see God. Can an ant see a complete body of an elephant? From whichever angle or whichever dimension an ant goes, it cannot see the complete body of an elephant. An ant cannot fit the elephant's body in its vision. So similarly, we cannot fit God in our vision. We can see only those things which God has given us to see. So let's conclude on this topic. Does God exist? Yes, God is existing. The creation and everything around us, they indicate to us about the presence, about the existence of God. When we connect to God and when we consciously realize the things which God is doing in our lives and in the world, then we can feel the presence of God. Then we can experience the existence of God. So God is existing, God is living, God is alive, and God is real. If you seek Him, then you will find Him.